Hey y'all. I want to chat about so I love to read. My mom is an elementary school teacher, so we had an abundance of books. Spent a lot of time reading, um, and I've continued that into adulthood. And sometimes it's included like some self-help leadership books. I don't never loved them, and this is maybe a little controversial, but I've never found I got anything out of them. Um, they just kind of they they give you permission to do and to feel things, and also at the time of when I started to read a lot of the self-help books, I wasn't ready to hear that. Going through all the medical stuff that I was going through, I didn't I didn't feel a lot of things, to be honest. Um, but I love reading historical fiction. I've read some really good biographies, a couple books that I've read like multiple times, some cute little rom-com ones. But recently, I just got introduced to the world of fantasy romance. And I bring this up because in our last podcast with Tracy, we talked about reading a little bit. And of course, she's so intelligent and so resourceful and is talking about her like highly intelligent um leadership and self-help books, and I love that so much. I'm sitting over here being like, the dragons. I started off, so the first like introduction to fantasy romance was Fourth Wing. If you haven't read it, I have made I think all of my clients read it because it was far more impactful for me than any other like heavy read. And I had so much more self-reflection out of the books that I've been reading recently than I have, again, out of any self-help books. And not to say that they aren't awesome, and I'm so grateful if someone for the people who've been able to get something out of that. I think that's great. But for me, in dragons and swords and badass female main characters and morally gray male characters that if I met them in real life would have been stabbed, but in the book it seems to be okay. But one of the things I love about all of so like I've read like Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, A Court of Thorns and Roses, the ACOTAR series, Crescent City, Fate Inked in Blood, Spark of the Everflame series. If you haven't read that, highly recommend. I devoured it. But some of the common themes that I've gotten from these books that have been so impactful for me is I love that like the talk around like bodies and physical fitness is all meant to build strength and to build these strong, capable warriors in these females. And it's not talked about to be skinny. It's not talked about to lose weight. It's you need to put on some muscle. You need to be able to take care of yourself. And I I I that got me out of a little bit of a workout rut where I was just kind of not really wanting to move that. And the training in the books are just so motivating of creating these badass, strong, capable females. Um, and like mind you, most of the themes are like, oh, the guy's training her and like showing her that she's stronger than she thinks she is. So like we skip over that part. She finds her own strength. But it's just so refreshing to have um it talked about in terms of building strength and training to be capable humans instead of can you make yourself smaller, because a lot of the media, that's what working out has been, is making yourself smaller, making yourself thinner, and these are like, no, we're going to wield a sword and we're going to fight a man that is twice our size. So the violence doesn't necessarily need to come with it, but I enjoy that. um and then for me, on like a very personal note, one of the things that was like super interesting for me is all of them have the main male character who, like most of the ones that I have connection with, if you will, are the ones that are like standing by her, but taking care of her in terms of like, if you want to talk about like the tropes, like touch her and die. I really enjoyed that. And I was like, oh, like what? And so, and all of the therapy that I'm doing, all of the self-reflection that I'm doing, I'm like, okay, like what is it about that I find attractive? And it's that having that protectiveness that I'm realizing I haven't let anyone do. And again, like I'm not I don't need someone to protect me from dragons, but like if we talk about like if we go really deep and talk about like your inner child and like all of the things that I experienced in a medical perspective, having dialysis and a transplant by the age of 8, and just that reflection of I learned to protect myself, and that built a very solid foundation of I take care of me. And I've carried that to like the extreme as an adult of like, I can do it myself. I don't need anybody. And in some ways that served me really well, but in other ways that put a hindrance on relationship with my husband, with my friends, of keeping them at an arm's length because I can do it myself. So like I got a fantasy romance book, and that's like none of the self-help books that I've read were like um skewed that deep level of self-reflection of holy shit, like that's something that I find desirable and I feel is lacking, and to be able to have that conversation with the people in my life of like I would like to be taken care of a little bit. And like, what does that look like in a non medieval setting? And what does that mean to me? What do I need to have fulfilled from that? So to have that spark of self reflection and that spark of I want to move my body to be strong, and like I got a lot out of a fairy tale for adults. And how fun is that? And like I especially with Fourth Wing, like I had a lot of clients who had some just hard winters. Like it was winters are hard, and this one in particular, like I just had a lot of people with a lot of stuff going on, and they just kind of felt like they were stuck in this hole. And Fourth Wing brought them out of their hole. And I love that I have all of my adult clients obsessed with dragons and fae and fairy tales and magic. And like how fun is that to have that excitement and to have that like childlike giddiness about magic. It's just been really lovely. um and then one of the other things that has been really interesting for me, again from like a self reflective point of view, is a lot of the like phrasings and quotes that like really speak to me, and that I just like absolutely adore and got me through some very hard times. I'm now realizing, again, through reflection and therapy, that they're kind of harsh. Um, like one of them, and I'm not giving it away, but in one of the ACOTAR books, I think it's the third one, the pink one, but you do not fear, you do not falter, and you do not yield. And when I initially read that, I was like, ooh, goosebumps. Like, ooh, I almost want to get that like tattooed on my body. Like, what a badass phrase. And then I realized harshness to it. And I'm calling this is my therapy era. Um, but to say like, you do not fear, you do not falter, you do not yield. Like I used to live by that. Like I previously would have wanted, again, like tattooed on my body, written on post-it notes and stuck everywhere. And while that's still a really badass phrase, I'm just realizing how harsh that is. Like you can fear, you can falter, yield, compromise, maybe not yield, but just that reflection of fear, you're allowed to falter, and maybe you do yield and do, again, like in the context of the book, it's like life or death, but in life, in our day-to-day life, it doesn't need to be that harsh. And like some of just all the other quotes, like there's a quote that I had on my wall for a long time from Eat, Pray, Love, and you are stronger than depression, you are braver than loneliness, and nothing will ever exhaust you. And I don't even need to look it up, that's ingrained in my brain, but nothing will ever exhaust you. Bitch, I'm tired. Like, tired. I am exhausted. Um, but like that got me through some very dark times in my life, some very deep depression. Um, and to just be like, no, we are not lonely, we are not depressed, we are not tired, we are marching through. And again, like I credit that mindset to, oh, I don't know what my life looks like that if it what my life looks like if I didn't have those mindsets. But now I'm starting to appreciate the beauty of letting that all come down, and of letting yourself be vulnerable, letting yourself be open to that and feeling it and sitting in it, and not just saying no, that doesn't exist, because of course that exists. Like it's, again, my medical history has been at extreme, um in where I needed that mentality. But on a day-to-day basis, like a lot of us, I feel, kind of shove all that stuff down, or feel, don't want to feel any fragments of that vulnerability. Um, so now I kind of shift more to the mindset of like the Maya Angelou, or Maya Angelou, and Still I Rise is what I've been leaning towards, instead of like, yes, I'm exhausted. Yes, I fear. Yes, I falter. Still I rise. So it's just so fascinating. Again, like all this literally sparked from fantasy romance, but just all that reflection. Um, it's just so cool. It's so cool. So I love leadership books. I love self-help books. I love if people find meaning from that, but I don't think it needs to be looked upon any less if you aren't reading those things, if you're not listening to empowering podcasts, if you're just listening to something for fun, because you can find growth and inspiration from fairy tales or rom-coms or whatever it is that fills your bucket and gives you joy. Um, One of my clients, who is I kind of blame her for a lot of the books that I had picked up for fantasy romance, because she loves them and I love chatting with her about it, but she calls them junk food. Like these are her junk food books, and she reads a lot of like both fiction and nonfiction, but she reads a lot of like really intelligent books too, and I love that, and I love chatting with her about them. But yeah, the junk food, like there's something to be said though, if like the joy that junk food can bring you, and the inspiration that junk food can bring you. It's just so fun, and to be able to have something that people are excited about and they want to chat with you and share with you, and it's just so fun. So I just wanted to chat about that, and I'm hoping to have a friend of mine on at some point. We'll go into detail, because every time I finish a book, I'm like, oh, you're reading this next. Um, it's been fun to watch that, and watch, of course, like my entire Instagram feed is now just like books, just books. Um, but yeah, it's really fun. It doesn't. I think the biggest thing is it doesn't have to be that deep. No, nothing has to be that deep. Um, yeah. So if you haven't read Fourth Wing, highly recommend it, and then be prepared to jump down a rabbit hole, because it just gets wilder from there. And if you're interested, I am on Goodreads too. I kind of stopped, not kind of, I like fully stopped really watching television. I think in like February is whenever I started reading Fourth Wing that like all of a sudden I was just in this whole reading world and I stopped watching all television. I decreased my phone time. So it's now May and I've read 20 books since January, which is bonkers. And everyone's like, how have you had time? And part of it is like, yes, if I'm super into a book, some of the things that should be getting done have maybe been set aside. Um, but a lot of it is I just kind of cut out the extras, the bullshit, and nothing wrong with sitting and watching TV after work in your evening, whatever you do. Again, you will honestly get very little judgment from me on wherever you bring joy, however you decompress, do it. But yeah, I just watching TV and significantly decreased my screen time. And the other thing with my I haven't been officially diagnosed with ADHD, but like it's it's there. Um, I can't focus on like if I have a television show on, I am always also working on my phone or playing with something or doing work. But it's been really grounding to again get lost in these stories and to be able it just gives my brain such a different stimulation that I feel so grounded and rested after reading versus like watching TV before going to bed. I have a much harder time of noticing falling asleep after because I'm still getting so much stimulation. My brain doesn't settle because I have the TV going, I have my phone going, computer going, whatever, still thinking about work, still thinking about what I have to do the next day, where I just get lost in these stories when I'm reading. So, and again, time and place, I still, there's some really good television shows out there. Love it. But it's just been really um, impactful for me to notice the difference of like even reading is making me sleep better. And talking to, so I've made both of my sisters too, but it's so funny. They both had to like cool their jets a little bit because they were having like nightmares about like trying to be killed based off of these fantasy romance books. Um, I didn't have that. My brain finds that soothing. I don't know if that's like a trauma response. Um, but yeah, it's just been really impactful having that change and being able to be excited about fairy tales again is really, really fun. So those are my thoughts for today. If you haven't read Fourth Wing, go do it. I think I still have 2 copies that are lent out to people right now, but highly, highly recommend. It's like literally, can I say it's life changing? Life changing. And then the other one, Spark of the Everflame. If you haven't read that one, it's not talked about as much as the ACOTAR series and Fourth Wing, but the first book is, I want to say like a kind of like unremarkable. It's just slow. So like it's world building, it's character building, but then the second and the third book are so good. I couldn't put them down. And then Penn Cole is the author of that one, Sparks of the Everflame. And she is considered an indie author. But the coolest part of that is she still runs all of her own social media. So I've been like completely fangirling over chatting with her on Instagram. Like I don't care much for celebrities. Like if I saw a celebrity in real life, like that doesn't I wouldn't squeal. It wouldn't I was like, oh cool, look at who's there. But like I'm super fangirling over chatting with her about her book and the impact that it's had on my life on such a deeper level. So yeah, that's my celebrity. Super freaking out about chatting with this author. And just learning what that looks like for them and where they have restrictions because of their status in terms of like they can't have physical copies put on pre-order on the Amazon, for example. So it's just been cool to like from a business owner standpoint, chatting with her about the differences on where the restrictions are for them for press and for release and all of that. So it's fun to be able to relate with that and to be able to chat in terms of running a smaller business and realizing that she has a lot of the same challenges that I do, even though our businesses have nothing to do with one another. Um, So yeah, I am hitting pause on a little bit of the fantasy romance. Oh shoot, I can't remember her name, but she wrote Every Summer After and Meet Me at the Lake. Her new book was released today, so I pre-ordered it. It got delivered, so I'm gonna go enjoy a rom-com for a little bit, and then I am not done with fantasy romance. I will be back because it's been really, really fun. But little breather, might read something with a tad more historical fiction to it as well. Kristen Hanna has one of her newer books about the women. So I'm really looking forward to reading that as well. But thanks for joining me. Go read Fourth Wing.